Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. It's time for another big finish audio adventure. This time, it's Colditz. So this is the 25th Big Finish monthly adventure, starring Sylvester McCoy as the 7th Doctor and Sophie Aldred as Ace, or later in the story, McShane, Dorothy McShane. So, as always, I'll go over a little bit of the plot line, just to explain what's going on in my own words. And then we'll go through some of the characters, some production values, some of the good bits of the story, bad bits of the story, and all the usual stuff we have for a review. The Doctor and Ace land in Colditz in 1944, and it splits into two subplots. The first one is to try and get away, as the TARDIS is commandeered not long after its landing. And Ace ends up having quite interesting frisson with Sergeant Kurtz, failed Weibel Kurtz, as is called in the notes. The Doctor, meanwhile, gets commandeered by an outside member of the German High Command, Elizabeth Klein. And the Doctor starts to suspect that Klein's more than she seems, and realises the papers that she's brought in are forged. Ace then ends up getting involved with a plan with Timothy Wilkins to escape Colditz. Of course, Colditz being the famous prison where escapees are part of the prison. There is a little bit of a blind eye being turned here with Schaefer, the captain of one of the more senior officers of Colditz prison, who is basically in league with the lead flying officer, Gower. The plot splits in two. Klein takes the Doctor away, and the Doctor finds that Klein has come back to 1944 from a Germany of 1965, where in her timeline, the Germans have won World War II. The Doctor realises that it's actually his TARDIS that's been used to bring her back, but the TARDIS has disappeared by the time that Klein returns to where she landed. The Doctor starts to suspect there's a bit more to it, and he probably has been part of the plans, which was confirmed later on in the story, but not in his timeline. It's more a timey-wimey thing. It's also found out that with Kurtz taking Ace's bag, which included a CD Walkman, Kurtz was very interested in this technology, and if it hadn't been collected, would have caused the Germans to win the war instead of the Allies. It all comes to head at the end. Klein manages to escape before she gets a chance to be found out, and Kurtz, who has had a vendetta against Ace, I think is a polite way of putting it, finally gets a chance to confront them. But Schaefer interferes, and Kurtz tries to get into the TARDIS as the TARDIS disappears, and gets killed in the process as he was half in, half out of the TARDIS. So that's basically your plotline for Colditz. Very short, very sweet. Let's go through the main cast of the story, and we start off with, of course, the Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy. This is definitely Cartmel Master Plan era 7th Doctor, scheming, planning, but it seems that he's kind of subject to events that he creates, probably in his future, as far as he's concerned, but a future that changes the timeline effectively. So it's an interesting dynamic that the Doctor has in this story. The interaction between him and Klein is probably the best conversation you get in here, and he's always suspicious of Klein. He already knows Klein's up to something, not completely up to scratch. And McCoy plays every line very well. It's very much the 7th Doctor that we know in the later two seasons of his series, of his TV run. We are starting to get a more darker and even more manipulative Doctor starting to come through, probably in preparation for Hex joining not long in the future. Yeah, I quite like the way McCoy makes his performance here as the Doctor. Is very well performed, very nuanced in the way that McCoy does it. It doesn't sound like he's reading off the script anymore. It sounds like he's actually got into the role quite easily, and it's starting to show the side of the Doctor that I liked of the 7th Doctor, this kind of slight chess master plan, although he's slightly out of sync with events, because obviously he's reliving a plan that the Doctor seems to infer that he does in the future. So it's an interesting dynamic in this one, and it's nice to see how McCoy plays off it, and does slowly realise, of course, that Doctor is involved in Klein's escape to 1944 with the TARDIS and everything else. It's very interesting how that works. We then have Ace, played by Sophie Aldred. Very much still developing on the character from season 26. There's been a couple of fairly traumatic stories for Ace more recently, but the CD Walkman that she received in the 21st century has come to, let's say, muck up things. It's not a big plot point, but you can see the rebellious nature of Ace come through here, certainly because she's in Colditz, she wants to work on that, and her disdain for Kurtz is absolutely fantastic. It's really nice to see, and it's a lovely dynamic that Sophie Aldred has as the second plot line. I mean, that's the thing, Ace is like a counter plot line alongside the Doctor's own story. It diverges rather quickly. Sophie Aldred nails everything she gets. It's a very, very controlled performance, and I do like the way it's portrayed. We then have Toby Longworth playing Julius Schaefer, and he is very much probably realistic. You know, he knows he's on the German side. He's got to support the German army, but he's quite pally with Gower. I love the nuances that Schaefer has. He's more of a workable person, a bit easily manipulated. He is a bit, not cowardly, but he hasn't got the stomach to be the big officer who goes through the full Nazi way. He is a bit more nuanced. He's a bit more what you would probably class as the more nuanced German of the time, and probably the vast majority of the German army, to be fair. On the other hand, though, you've got Kurtz, played by David Tennant. His first appearance in the Big Finish audios, not the last, but his first appearance as a guest character in the Big Finish audios. Unless you know it's him, you can't tell. He puts on a German accent very well, and Kurtz is one of these characters who wants to rise through the ranks and will do anything to do so. I love the slimy nature of Kurtz, though, because you do get the sense that Kurtz feels entitled. And also, he seems to, there's indications that he fancies Ace and uses that to his advantage. And I love the way the performance is nailed by David Tennant. I think it really does make a brilliant little baddie of the week. You know, he's the main baddie, really. Klein is misguided, but Kurtz is the one you need to look out for. He's the loose cannon. He's very loyal to the Nazi cause. He's very much takes orders and works with those orders, and it does cause a bit of jeopardy for Ace a few times. We then have Nicholas Young playing Bill Gower. Interesting nuanced performance of upper class, upper crust officer of the British Army, and very well nuanced and knows how to manipulate Schaefer quite well, and it's a nice little dynamic Schaefer and Gower have in this story, and Nicholas Young does a good job. We've then got Timothy Wilkins played by Peter Ray. Peter Ray's quite good as Timothy, this kind of cowering journalist who seems to have been caught up in Colditz because he ended up on the wrong side of the fence when he was reporting and ended up in Colditz. He's a bit of a snivelling one because he kind of bottles out and clepes on Ace and Gower's plan to escape when Ace takes his plan on board. It's interesting how he turns a little bit and how he gets his comeuppance in some respects, the way the rest of the camp turns on him. It's interesting seeing that kind of weakness come through, and it's really quite nice to be performed by Peter Ray. And then we have probably the standout guest star, which is Tracy Charles's Elizabeth Klein. And Klein is an interesting character who's time travelled, thinks she has everything planned out. However, the Doctor does seem to see through it a little bit, and even though you think that she's got the upper hand at one point, she really doesn't. She really has got a bad rap of everything, I think is a polite way of putting it. I really like the way that Klein is played here. She thinks she has the upper hand on the Doctor, but the Doctor really kind of susses her out rather quickly and bouncing off her and manipulates her, and there's a nice little chess between them, and sets up for Klein to return in later stories, and it really is a good little performance overall. I think it works really well. The story itself is interesting. You're in Colditz. Colditz is well known at this point in history as a place that's inescapable. There's quite a few discussions about plots that have happened before. I think it's really nice the way it's discussed and the way it's worked out and the way it's planned. I think it's really nice the way the script has been written by Stephen Lyons. I love the frisson, as I say, between Kurtz and Ace throughout the story. You do get the hint, although it's never explicitly said, that Kurtz has something for Ace. He's a bit back and forth with her at sometimes, and I love that. I love the relationship that the Doctor and Klein seem to have against each other. Klein kind of needs the Doctor, and the Doctor's kind of suspicious, but he kind of susses it out quite quickly, and it's really nice to see. Directing wise, Gary Russell, I think, has directed this well. I think the characters come off great. I think most of the actors have been given, maybe not Nicholas Briggs free reign, but a bit more free reign to actually develop characters than normal. Gary Russell can be quite regimented in his direction at times, but it doesn't seem to interfere too much with the story here. And it's quite a nice little production overall. And actually, overall, I do quite enjoy this story. Overall, I think the story is one of the stronger ones of the first 25 of the Big Finish audio range. And it's interesting, I've already got to 25 stories as it is. For that, I think it's actually quite a high McCoy story, and I'm going to give it 4 TARDISes out of 5. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the stories I've reviewed so far. Colditz sits in at 4 TARDIS out of 5, alongside the Genocide Machine, the Spectre of Lanyon Moor, the Stones of Venice, and Luke Garou. At the top, the highest rated story so far is the Apocalypse Element with 4.5 TARDIS out of 5, and at the bottom there's still 2 stories, The Land of the Dead and Winter for the Adept at 3 TARDISes out of 5. That's it from me. Thank you very much for listening to this Big Finish audio review. What did you think of Colditz? Leave a comment down below. Did you like it? Leave a comment down below. Did you not like it? Leave a comment down below. If you like this review, please like it and share it with the hashtag teamstructor, and also hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General, new video every second Sunday at 4 PM GMT. And you'll see me in 2 weeks' time, and that'll be for a 6 facts. But until then, guys, thank you very much for watching and listening, as always. And you know what? I'll see you later.